Hi, World Journal. Hi, everybody. I'm very excited to start on today's seminar. Thank you so much to World Journal for having me here today. My name is Jenny Wheatley, and I'm from Admission Masters. I'm the president here, and I'm very excited to share some information that I hope will be very beneficial and helpful to everybody that's attending here today. So let me go ahead and start with sharing my screen, and then we'll go ahead and get started. So once again, thank you all so much for being here today. I will be talking about the 2025 admissions results, trends, and strategies for college admissions. A little bit about Admission Masters before we get started. We are named the #1 educational consulting organization. We have admission officers from across the nation that work with us as counselors. We are the leader in boarding school and college admissions. We not only help students with college, but we also support students with other things such as private school, boarding school, and graduate school as well. We use a team approach at Admission Masters, and we tailor all of our programs and our meetings for each of our students because every student is very different, and we want to make sure that all of our students are getting the support that they need in order to have the best success in college admissions. I will keep the QR code here, and it will also be on my background as well, so that you guys can kind of use the QR code to learn a bit more about Admission Masters. Since this is a pre-recorded version of our seminar today, you'll also be able to use this QR code to ask any questions. I will answer them personally and send you an email with the responses. So if you do have any questions as I'm going through the seminar today, you can send me or use the QR code for the form. Send me any questions that you have. I'd be more than happy to answer them for you. If you need to have the response in Chinese, I'll get that translated and make sure that one of our staff members who can speak Chinese can also respond to your question. So please feel free to fill out the form and give us information. And you can also sign up for a free initial consultation as well if you would like to do that through our QR code. So I just wanted to start with giving you some information about the results. Now, all the results for college admissions have now come out. Some of the data hasn't come out yet. So for example, the UCs, they haven't fully published their data. Some Ivy Leagues have not fully published their data, but I did want to just show you guys the numbers and particularly things that were very surprising to me this year with admission on numbers going down with acceptance. So Emory had a 9.8% acceptance rate. Northeastern, not Western, Northeastern had a 5.6% acceptance rate. NYU at 8%, University of Notre Dame at 9%, and USC at 10%. So college admissions is getting more and more difficult. I think I pretty much say that every year. And the trend is that in the future, we assume that it will be getting to get more and more difficult. Let's dive into why that might be the case, though. Why are college admissions numbers decreasing? Why is it becoming harder and harder to get admitted into college? So let's just look at some data here really quickly. So this is particularly a focus on just the early deadline. So by the December 1st deadline, the Common App had over 5 million applications and over 1 million applicants, and 863 returning colleges to the common application. So you can kind of see that the numbers are going up. I have some charts here that you can see. A lot of these charts, even for public and private schools, those numbers and the number of applicants are higher. And actually, I saw another recent data more recently that this year, class of 2025 seniors was the largest graduating class of all time so far. So just more and more students are graduating, more and more students are applying to colleges. They're applying to more colleges than they have been before, but that doesn't mean colleges are getting larger. So colleges are still having the similar amount of number of spots available, but the number of applicants are getting larger and larger, which means that there's less and less spots, which means lower and lower admissions rates. Some really interesting things and key findings for the application trends. So as I mentioned, more applicants and applications. It's a 5% increase from the year before. More first generation applicants. So those are applicants who um, are the first in their family to go to college. Their parents did not go to college. So 15% increase of first generation applicants since the year before. There's more low income applicants, so 10% increase in fee waivers. And just so you know, fee waivers are basically given by high school counselors based on your income. Sometimes they're given by colleges and sometimes they're given by the actual application. But basically, they're just giving you a free opportunity to apply to more colleges. And there has been a 10% increase in those fee waivers, which means there were more low income applicants this year than before. And then more domestic applicants, 20 to 25% increase from what it was in previous years. So more students from the United States are also applying to college. So just getting more difficult because there's more applicants, more applications, but not enough spots, which means lower acceptance rates overall. A couple of other trends that we've kind of seen this year were four key areas. And I'm going to talk about these admission trends specifically. I'll also give you strategies for these admission trends so that you'll have a really good idea of what you need to do as a high school student and parent to be able to utilize these trends. So the first thing that we saw in terms of trends is early application deadlines offer clear advantages. So if you are applying early decision, early action, restrictive early action, single choice early action, most of these deadlines are November 1st of your senior year. And a lot of students, more applicants are applying for those early admissions, and more of them are getting admitted in those early rounds. So colleges are really finding that, doing early decision or early action is benefiting them as a college as well, which is why they have, clear advantages. So we'll dive into that in a little bit. The second is teacher recommendations and extracurricular activities. They're beginning to weigh a lot heavier, a lot more than they were before. So I would say, and I'll dive into this a little bit more, but if you felt like teacher recommendations only made a small percentage of your overall admissions to college, it's actually becoming more important, as well as extracurriculars, and we'll dive into that. SAT and ACT test scores are still valuable. I know we went from, the COVID era of test blind. You're not required to submit test scores, test optional. You have the choice to choose and submit test scores. But what we are seeing now and more than ever are that students who are getting admitted are actually submitting test scores. And we'll dive into that in a little bit. And then essays. Essays have always been a really important aspect of college admissions, but now we're seeing that it's becoming more important. And also the types of essays that college admissions really like is becoming a little bit different than it was before. So I'll be diving into all four of these aspects and letting you guys know how you can take advantage of that. Okay, so let's start with the types of early deadlines. There's four types of early deadlines. There's early decision, there's early action, there's single choice early action, and there's restrictive early action. Single choice early action and restrictive early action are very similar, but if I were to give you kind of the rules of these, so early decision, you can only apply to one school. If you get accepted, you have to go no matter what. Early action, you can do it to multiple early action schools. If you get accepted, you do not have to go. Single choice early action and restrictive early action are the same thing where you can only apply to that one college, but if you get accepted, you do not have to go. So these are the different types of early deadlines, and all of these early deadlines generally have a deadline of November 1st of your senior year. And because of that, you need to prepare earlier. So if you think about it, if you're submitting your application by November 1st of your senior year, the first semester of your senior year does not go into your application. So what goes into your application is everything that you did the summer after 8th grade, all the way until the summer after your 11th grade. So you do need to start preparing earlier so that you can make sure that you're meeting the deadline of the November 1st early applications. With that being said, I think it's also really important to understand that you need to do well academically early on, right? Of course, your senior year is still really important, but your 9th, 10th, and 11th grades are going to be the only things that go into your application if you take advantage of early deadlines. So it is important to start that process early, to build your academics and extracurriculars early so you have more to show when you're applying for those November 1st deadlines. So in order to do that, you need to choose your major direction before 10th grade because a lot of the activities, the courses that you choose, what you're going to be doing over the summer, all of those things are going to be based on the major that you choose. So if you look, I'm going to talk about this in the extracurricular activity section when we get to that in a moment. But what major you choose, you want to showcase to admissions how passionate you are about that major. If you want to show them how passionate you are about that major, you need to select that earlier so you can start building those activities. Even your course selection and what you'll be doing over the summer, they all, very much depend on your major direction. And I usually tell students, it doesn't have to be that you want to be a neurologist and, and that you have this very specific direction by ninth grade. You want to be a dentist. It doesn't have to be that. I would say just understanding at least at the very minimum, are you going towards STEM or are you going towards the humanities? If you have that general understanding, at least by ninth grade, then I think building on from that becomes a lot easier. So something I would highly recommend. And then of course, building impactful extracurricular activities in ninth and 10th grades. I've been telling students, start, exploring your interests, in ninth grade, join as many clubs as you possibly can, and then narrow those options down and build your leadership positions and activities in 10th and 11th grade. But nowadays with students, preparing a lot earlier, I actually feel like students should start exploring their interest in middle school, sixth, seventh, and eighth grade, at least, like I said, STEM or humanities, some sort of direction, some sort of strength, some sort of level of interest. And that way, right when you start high school in ninth grade, you're able to start building those extracurriculars early. So let's talk about teacher recommendations and extracurriculars. So first and foremost, about 3 or 4 years ago, teacher recommendations only made up about 5% of the overall weight of an applicant. So if you submitted your application, your academics are going to be one of the most important aspects, if not the most important. So your test scores, your GPA, the course rigor, that's going to be the most important, followed by your extracurriculars, second most important. And then in the past, it used to be essays are the third most important. And then after that was going to be the teacher recs. Now, the recent trends with college admissions is that, yes, still academics are the most important, followed by extracurriculars, but essays and teacher recommendations are equally important when it comes to college admissions. And now it makes up about 10 to 15% of the overall weight in your application. So it is really important to understand the value of teacher recommendations, especially with Asian American students and Asian students. They have a harder time building those relationships with teachers and high school counselors. It's really important to start that process early so that you could have really amazing recommendation letters moving forward. In regards to extracurriculars, in the past, leadership and the number of leadership positions that you had was considered to be important. Now, colleges care less about the title and more about the impact that you had as a leader. So, of course, you still need to be a leader in order to make some sort of impact. It's hard to make an impact in an organization being just a member. So not only do you want that leadership position, that commitment and that dedication, but you also want to show the impact that you had as a leader as well, so that college admissions can really understand your passion, your dedication, and commitment to the organization and what you want to do. So let's talk a little bit about strategies, okay? What kind of things, Jenny, can I do in order to make sure I get good teacher recommendations? What kind of things can I do with my extracurriculars to make sure that I stand out? So let's start with teacher recommendations. First and foremost, you need to start building those teacher relationships early. I tell my students to practice that even in middle school, but as soon as ninth grade starts, you want to start building that relationship. That's not just raising your hand and participating in the class. That's not just, paying attention to your teacher when they're teaching, but it's also talking to your teachers outside of academics, asking for advice, developing small talk. I coach a lot of my students on building relationships with teachers, and some of that starts with something as simple as talking to them in the hallway. When you see them in the hallway, Hi, Mr. So-and-so, how was your weekend? Instead of just saying hi and then, walking away from there, smiling and saying hi, how their day was going. I also tell students, like, if you know your teacher was out sick, when they come back, you should say, "Oh my gosh, I heard you were sick. Are you feeling better? How are you feeling now?" Showing that level of compassion and care goes a really long way. The reality is a lot of our students just kind of do the best they can in the classroom, but they don't think about outside of the classroom and how they can build those relationships outside of the classroom. But that's what's going to change your recommendation letter from an average mediocre rec letter to an excellent rec letter, or even a good rec letter to an excellent rec letter, is that difference, right? And the difference in the personal building and the relationship building of you and your teacher. I am going to let you guys know, since we are in April, Teacher Appreciation Week is coming up on May 5th to the 9th. So if your school doesn't do anything particular for Teacher Appreciation Week, or the parents do, but the students don't, I would highly recommend using that week to thank your teachers. And of course, like, gifts are really nice, and gift cards are really nice. But I usually tell my students that beyond that, you might want to write handwritten, personalized cards to your teachers, because those are the things that actually go a long way. In regards to extracurriculars, as I mentioned before, you want to choose your major strategy before 10th grade so you can start building your activities that are related to that. As I mentioned, your impact matters. The larger the impact, right? There's, community impact, local impact, there's state impact, there's national impact, there's international impact. So the larger the impact, the better it will be. It doesn't have to be that you're supporting, people in Africa, or that you're doing something in a third world country. It could be something that you're doing for your local community or for your school, but that level of impact and what you did to create that impact is really important. You do want to keep in mind academic awards, because colleges do want to see how you fully engage in your major direction or have strengths in a particular academic subject through competitions and academic awards. So that's something you want to continue planning. We do that for our students at Admission Masters. Every year, we have a set number of competitions that we recommend our students to go into, and we support them with those competitions so that they can build their academic awards from an early age. And then the other thing that's really important is the uniqueness factor. So the reality is you're going to be competing with students that have similar, backgrounds as you, because you're competing against students at your high school. So you're taking similar classes, you're exposed to the same clubs. What is it about you as a student that makes you different from all the other students at your high school, the students that you'll be competing with for a spot at a particular university? So you want to try to have one or two of those items to really make you stand out. And those could be like talents, like musical talent, sport talent, art talent, artistic talent, but it could also just be an activity or a passion project that you do that really showcases that level of uniqueness and color in your application. The third trend is the value of SAT and ACT. So what we saw for early admissions trend is that 95% of students who were admitted to top tier test optional colleges submitted an SAT or ACT score that was in the 75th percentile or above. So that means for the SAT, most of those students who were accepted submitted a score of a 15, 20, 30 or higher, and an ACT of a 34 or higher. The students who were admitted, which is really, really important to understand, because yes, they do really care about students to, submit, even if they say they're test optional, because so many students are submitting their test scores. They can't help but to to compare those students at the end of the day. So I would say, SAT, ACT, it doesn't look like they're going away anytime soon. ACT, digital ACT now allows you to opt out of the science section. So it's not a required part of the ACT. So things are changing with the SAT and ACT, and, taking advantage of those tests and doing well, especially if you are not as good academically, like in school, you don't have as many A's, for example, then you could consider, really spending your summers preparing for the SAT or ACT to provide a little bit of a balance in your academics. Overall, for the common application, over 50% of students submitted an SAT or ACT score. Not saying that they were above the 75th percentile, but they did submit an SAT or ACT score. So something also to just be thinking about and considering as well. So in terms of strategy, unfortunately, because the SAT or ACT are not going away anytime soon, plan your high school journey to prepare to take the SAT and ACT. The earlier you get it out of the way, the better. Of course, your math, your level of math and your level of English does matter, but if you are a native English speaker and you're pretty good with reading comprehension and writing, then you can prepare a little bit more to master the SAT or ACT. And for math, technically there is trig and a little bit of pre-calculus on the SAT. So, it would be good to be at that level of math before you start preparing, but it's a very small portion of the math section. So if you wanted to start preparing early, you can. Now, the reason I'm saying this, in the past, we're like, oh, you could take it the summer after or prepare for it, the summer after junior year or whatever. But nowadays, the reason I'm saying that you should try to get it done as soon as possible is because you want to spend some time building up your extracurriculars, going to really awesome summer programs or doing research or internships over the summer. And you can't do those things if you still have the SAT or ACT looming over your head. You can't do those things if you don't have the SAT or ACT score. So the earlier you get it out of the way, the better. Just give yourself the time and space over the summer to do other things that's not the SAT or ACT. The fourth trend were the essays that I wanted to talk about. So as I mentioned earlier, there was different things that college admissions really liked. My students this year that got accepted to Ivy League schools or even the top tier UC schools like UCLA, Berkeley, even San Diego, Santa Barbara, and Irvine were really hard to get into this year. And even those students in particular, the ones that got accepted did this very clearly in their essays. So number one, college admissions read your essays to understand a holistic understanding of who you are. They want to understand they want to receive a story that connects your major, that connects your extracurricular activities to something personal, right? If you say you wanted to go into biology or chemistry, right? They want essays that really showcase how that connects to you as a person, your life story, your characteristics, your level of compassion, all of those things. So they're really trying to get that holistic understanding. And colleges no longer want to see perfection. Perfection is what ChatGPT does or AI do, which is why it's very easy to tell when a student uses ChatGPT for their essays versus when they write it in their own voice. Colleges don't want to see perfection. They're not looking for perfect essays. They're looking for students to show their uniqueness and authenticity. And I think, I'm not saying that your grammar should be incorrect, in your essays, absolutely not. I'm not saying that you need to have perfect paragraphs and perfect word usage. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm saying that, of course, your grammar needs to be good. You shouldn't have any spelling errors in your essays, but the story you tell and the way in which you tell your story should be unique and authentic. So let's think about some strategies, okay? Think about your story early. I don't know, what grade parents are, what your children's grades are right now, or if you are a student, I don't know how old you are, what grade you're in. But if you're listening to this right now, you should start to think about your story. The earlier you think about this, I tell all of my students to keep a reflection journal so they can write down their ideas and jot down ideas on what types of things kind of build their story. And don't highlight your achievements, right? This is not a space for you to have a resume list of accomplishments. That's not what the essays are about. The essays, admission officers want to see what you learned, how your experiences shaped you, your dedication and commitment, and your passion for a particular subject as you built that over time. They're not trying to see that you won first place in this competition or that you did research with a professor or that you published a research paper. They're not trying to see that in your essays. That could be in your extracurricular activities, but in your essays, they want to see growth. They want to see your level of understanding and how your experiences have built you to be the person that you are today. think about your college list and understand how you fit and what you'll bring to the college. This is super important for college essays like, why do you want to come to our school, right? A lot of colleges have that essay prompt, why do you want to come to our school? How are you going to take advantage of the opportunities that our college provides? You need to really understand what that college is looking for, the types of students and the types of personalities that the college likes. And then based on that, you need to showcase to the college not only how well you'll fit to the actual university, but also what you're going to bring to the college and what you're going to gain from going to the university. So those are different aspects that you need to think about in the why this college essay. And then lastly, you want to make a personal connection with the readers and your values. So what do I mean by this? When I was an admission officer, I read a lot of essays and applications, and we're taught to be very logical and like try to be as logical as you can, but we're still human, and we admission officers have emotions and feelings, and so naturally we tend to be really. There are some subjectivity. We can't always be only logical. We're not robots, right? And so there's a little bit of subjectivity. The more you're able to connect with your readers by providing visual language, using visual words, and really telling a story like a creative writing prompt almost, the better that the admission officer will be able to connect with you. Instead of just, like I said, listing your accomplishments or listing your stories, think about some reflections. Tell your story the way that you would tell a friend when you're telling a story about your biography or your narrative. So generally in terms of the trend, there is a shift towards more personalized application reviews. So admission committees are becoming more holistic. They're really taking into considerations all aspects of the applicant's profile. So not just your grades and extracurriculars. Of course, those are still going to be the most important, but they're really looking at the holistic aspect of your essays, your narrative, your story, your teacher recommendations. They're even considering like your community and where you live, your financial, your environment, all of that. The holistic review process is happening for a lot of colleges. There is a really big emphasis on unique experiences and passions. Students need to really showcase your individuality and contributions, because more and more students are becoming more and more similar in a lot of ways, and doing a lot of the similar things. And so how you emphasize your unique experiences and what makes you different is going to be really valuable. And then once again, the strong essays and recommendations, these components play a really important role in highlighting your strengths as an applicant. So building those essays early, building those teacher recommendations early, all of this leads to a much more personalized application review process, where admission officers are looking at individual students and really understanding how they fit to their overall incoming class and their school at large. Okay, so in terms of my last kind of next steps, I would highly recommend students plan early. The earlier you start, the earlier you prepare, the better you'll be when it comes to applying for colleges and preparing for colleges and college admissions and applications, but also having the best chance of getting accepted to your dream school. You do want to build a strong profile, and I highly recommend seeking support. 1 in 3 students have a college consultant, or educational consultant, or a counselor that helps them. And if you don't have one, you're at a disadvantage. College admissions at the end of the day is mind-boggling. There's so many puzzle pieces. There's so many things that you need to think about when you're applying for colleges. And so it's really important to really start that process early, building that strong profile early, and getting support on doing that as well. Lastly, as I wrote here, you guys can contact us at any time. Again, this is a pre-recorded version. So please, since I'm not having a Q&A directly in the session, please feel free to take a picture of this QR code. Send me your questions. I will answer them directly to your email. And we also have free consultations available. So if you're interested in learning a bit more about us, and learning about what we can do to help your child or help you as an applicant, feel free to reach out to us. There's also a form that you can can fill out on our website. And with that, I just wanted to say thank you all so much for this opportunity. I hope you got a lot of information, and I hope to see all of you guys soon. Bye, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your seminars and the rest of your day.